Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's Patrick of Media Surf.
It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. I don't know how to do that, how to top it, but I'll just say, yo. It's how Pat said the last episode. It's the other half of the podcast. This is your other host, Sebastian Ospina. And as my co host said, welcome to the fourth episode of Media Surf. And as per tradition, I'm going to ask the lovely question I always like to ask my co host, Patrick. How are you doing today?
I can't complain, sir. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. We have some really exciting news that we actually literally just spoke about probably like
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes before we started recording.
Yep, that we did.
So yeah, there's nothing really to complain about right now. So doing
No,
pretty well.
sir. No, sir. And so as Sebi mentioned, we've got a little recent news before we delve into some more expansive media reviews. We have some media-related news that just dropped. And Sebi, you want to take it away? You've got it right in front of you.
Sure. So last episode, Patrick gave me the absolute awesome surprise about David Corn Sweat
That's right.
and Rachel
Brosnan.
Brosnan. Okay.
Corn Sweat was the one I had the harder time saying because I was
Yeah.
reading. I'm like, Corn Sweat?
Yeah.
That's a weird name.
Yeah. Or
But
like
it-
corn. It almost looks like corn sweet, but it's
Yeah,
like
right.
corn's
No, it was,
sweat. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure, but Brosnan was a lot easier.
Yes.
Like, I think that's how Pierce Brosnan's name is spelled. So.
Right.
There you
And so last episode, he gave me the news of both of them being casted as both Superman and Lois Lane for James Gunn's
Superman Legacy.
Superman Legacy. And upon last recording, we now have 4 more castings that have been released,
That's right.
which is very exciting. As just it's very cool because in the end, this is a new movie, and any new movie, it's always awesome hearing the exciting cast that's going to be tagged along with it. So right now we have Isabella Merced as
Okay.
Hawkgirl. I don't know
Nice.
if you know her.
No, and Hawkgirl's never been in a movie before. As far as I know, Hawkman was in Black Adam.
Yeah.
And I feel like they'll probably recast him now at this point
Yeah.
too, right? Because it's setting up a new universe.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see whether or not they keep some people. If they're not, I mean,
It's a bummer for that guy.
yeah, we'll definitely see because I think he did a pretty good job at as a character himself.
Haven't seen the movie.
We also have Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific,
Cool.
and we have Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, which is
Oh.
very interesting.
Oh, yeah. I did hear that.
Yeah.
Now, Nathan Fillion was in the Suicide Squad, right?
Yes, he
Who-
was.
he
I'm
was,
pretty sure he was.
The detachable kit?
Yeah.
TDK?
I'm pretty sure.
Interesting.
So I think he might, because they announced that he was the one that survived.
Yeah, I know. James Gunn said that he was the one who survived. Which
Yeah.
obviously he's going to say that because he's friends with Nathan Fillion. But
Yeah. Which
that's
is going to
so
be
weird.
interesting.
Well,
yeah.
now I'm thinking, like, is the Suicide Squad not canon anymore?
I don't know.
That would make me very sad. That's one of my favorite DC
Yeah.
movies.
That'd be a real bummer. And we also have Anthony Kerrigan as Metamorpho.
Oh.
And Anthony Kerrigan, I believe, is the guy that played Victor Zsasz in Gotham.
Okay.
I really liked him. I thought he was awesome
Sure.
in that. And yeah, it is. He did an excellent job as Victor Zsasz for Gotham. That's a very good show.
I haven't seen it yet.
Something I definitely have to rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it's very interesting considering, especially want to tackle on Guy Gardner because I don't think they've canceled the Jon Stewart Green Lantern show yet.
That's the thing.
So like, are you now gonna do a little bit of like how it is with sometimes Peter Parker and Miles Morales? Are you gonna have 2 Green Lanterns in the same universe?
I think that would be okay.
No,
Because
like, it
the
would.
thing about it's like what?
Green Lantern Corps, yeah.
So it's multiple people.
Yeah.
Can so I think that's a lot less complicated than having like multiple Peter Parkers because
Right.
on top of Miles Morales, there's also talk of, are they going to do an Amazing Spider-Man 3? Are they going to do another
Right.
Tobey movie? And for fans, that'd be great. But for general audiences, that would be confusing because they'd be like, well, who's Spider-Man? The Batman situation's already confusing. You've got
Right.
Batfleck is out of the picture now, but I don't know how many people in the general public who don't follow this news obsessively know that. You've got Robert Pattinson doing more
Pattinson.
Batman movies, but he's not going to be part of the DC extended universe or the whatever James Gunn's new universe is called.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Michael Keaton was now just in the new one, in The Flash, which we'll talk about later,
And then you have the upcoming Batman movie, the one
which
that's
still
Batman.
doesn't have a cast.
No.
Right.
So, and you already know that that's going to be a different person.
100% than
Batman.
anybody we've just noted.
Yeah.
It's going to be a completely different casting choice, which James Gunn has said that's long into the future. He hasn't thought about casting
Right.
Batman yet. So it's not something we have to worry about right now. But long story short, I think the Green Lantern situation is a lot easier to remedy.
Right.
My big thing that I was interested in is I'm really hoping that Guy Gardner is not the Green Lantern they go with
Right,
for
me
their
too.
primary one, because
Same.
that's one of my least favorite Green Lanterns.
He's my least favorite.
And
so.
it's not just because of his stupid haircut.
Yeah.
It's just because I've never been all that interested in his character.
Unless they get Batman to sucker punch him like he does in the comic
That'd
books.
be pretty cool.
That I'd be pretty hyped about. But yeah, no, definitely because if that's the case, you wonder the question, okay, if you're gonna get Jon Stewart, you're also gonna get Guy Gardner.
Right.
Does that mean at some point we're gonna get a Hal Jordan?
Right, yeah. I guess that's something they'd really want to build up towards,
Right.
because they really fumbled the bag with
Yeah.
the Ryan Reynolds one back in 2008, I think it was, that movie came out.
Right.
Or maybe a little later. I don't remember
Also,
exactly.
a quick, very super quick one sentence thing to say is, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see
Oh, Wolverine?
the pictures?
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're in for a show. That's gonna
Absolutely.
be really cool.
I'm
very
really
excited.
looking forward to that.
Yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know, this week there were several pictures of the set of Deadpool 3 that got leaked, and it showed both Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, and Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine in a very comic book accurate suit for both of them, not just Wolverine, Deadpool
Deadpool as
himself
well,
too,
yeah.
because I was telling this to my buddy Tom, shout out Tom Rochford, I love you, that it looks less movie-y, less cinematic-y, and kind of more like grounded and a little more like ruffly.
I could see that. Yeah, that's fair. Although I've always liked Deadpool's suit. I
Oh yeah,
thought
no,
that
me too.
they've always done a really good job. It's never, and I've never been a big Deadpool fan as far as reading the comics
Right.
obsessively or anything like that. But his suit has never bothered me as
No,
far as
me
watching it on
neither.
screen, being like, I wish I could see it like this. But it has always been in the back of my mind of like, I really want to see Wolverine don that suit.
Yes.
I just know that the tone of those movies wouldn't really work. You may have been able to get away with it back in the early 2000s, the
Right.
tone of those movies, but by the time you get to Logan, it's like, nah, it's you've already gotten into too dark, too gritty territory. You've done so much with the character. The bright comic suit, as much as we love it, doesn't fit that tone anymore.
Yes, and what was crazy was it was the Wolverine between Origins, X-Men Origins Wolverine and Logan. There was the Wolverine, and in the end of that movie, is he's on the plane, and I forget her name, but she gives him a suitcase. He opens the suitcase, and it has the
Oh, I
suit
think I
with
remember
gloves
that.
and like the mask. And she goes, "Interesting choice, right?" And that's how the movie ends.
And
they
never really
dove into it. Nothing.
I remember seeing that in theaters, and
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
Yep.
Oh man.
So, both Marvel and DC, very exciting news this week. And
Yeah.
it was awesome. I mean, Superman, if anybody knows anything about me, it's really funny. I'm actually wearing a Batman/Superman shirt right now. And no, it is not a Zack Snyder shirt. This is actually pre-Zack Snyder, as you can tell just from like the logo of
Yeah,
it.
if you were to see it, you'd be like, that is not Zack Snyder. It's way too colorful to be
Yeah.
Zack Snyder.
But Superman is my second favorite DC superhero. So, to get any exciting news about this upcoming film, I'm all for it. James Gunn, I trust you. I think you're going to do an incredible job. I'm very excited to see where this goes. And yeah, very exciting. And also, I'm super excited for Deadpool 3 and to relive my childhood again and see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
That's for sure. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Hugh Jackman don that suit.
Yes.
I know a lot of people were upset about him coming back because they think that it undermines Logan. And at first I did agree.
Yeah.
I thought that, okay, that's a little dumb. But it seems like they're probably going with a different variant of that character.
I don't know if you saw it, but they actually released a video of the two of them actually speaking about it.
I might have. I don't remember.
So it was like the week that they announced that Hugh Jackman was going to be in it. I think it was maybe like a day or two after that they made the announcement.
Yeah, I think I did see that.
And he said that, like, yes, like, for people that are concerned, that Logan is still dead.
Yeah.
So we're going into a different tone. And then obviously when they start talking about the movie, you hear someone like vacuum cleaning.
Right.
So you don't even get to hear, what they're talking about. But very excited nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with stuff like that. Like if Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. were to be Tony Stark again for some other project that doesn't undermine his sacrifice at the end of Endgame,
100%.
Sure, why not? I don't have a problem with that. I would just hate if they hopped in a time machine, brought him back, and he's going to do 10 more movies.
No, yeah, me too.
I'd have a big problem with that. But to do a one-off thing, like a what if scenario, what if there was a more comic accurate, fun, eccentric, almost comedic version of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I'm totally down with that. I don't think that there's really a problem.
Yeah.
And hopefully the movie's good.
Yeah. Fingers crossed for the both of them.
There you go. All right. Speaking of Wolverines and other exotic animals.
It's a perfect segue. I love that. That was awesome.
Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness, Episode 4.
Yes.
Previously, on the first 3 episodes, we were centering around a variety of themes regarding these big cat people and the controversies that surround them. While everybody gets generally equitable screen time, I think it's kind of fair to say the first episode, Not Your Average Joe, is primarily centered around Joe and who he is and the people in his life. The second episode, Doc Antle is more of the star of that show. It's about the cult-like behavior.
Right?
Cult of personality, yes.
Okay.
It's the cult-like behavior of these big cat people and the kind of hero complex or the god complex that they tend to have. Third episode, The Secret, we focus more on Carol and the mysteries surrounding her missing husband, Don Lewis. And now we're entering what I consider to be the start of the story of Tiger King. I think episodes 1 through 3 give us a lot of useful background information that tell us about the world of the big cat trade and this kind of feud that all of them have with each other. And now events start to transpire in a narrative cohesive faction. Like, one event leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. This one is called Playing with Fire. Literal title by the middle of the show. Middle of the episode, rather. Sebi, what did you think of episode 4 of Tiger King?
Honestly, what was, and literally as I was saying it as we were setting up today, what was so cool about it is we literally watched it less than 24 hours ago.
Yes, we did. This is the first time we're kind of making an episode very close to having watched the episode of Tiger King. So it's cool to have it fresh in our minds.
No, I actually really like this way. And, if we can do that for the next couple of ones, that would be awesome. If not, it's no big deal. But, it was funny because last night, unintentionally, we were just talking about the episode, and I was like, man, dude, that episode was fire. And then Pat just started laughing. And, it took me, a second to be like, wait. Well, I was like, oh, what it was called and what they talked about.
Yep.
But, it was definitely very good. I liked it. I said this to you last night. Personally, I think that this one was my second favorite episode.
Very interesting take, and I'm happy to hear it. So we start off this episode talking about the influence of social media. Well, actually, we start off this episode with another Joe Exotic music video, and Joe singing along to his own song while he's in the car
Yes.
with probably like a 1 or 2 year old tiger sitting in the next seat.
Yeah, which is Pat and I were talking about that last night. It was just so funny. Like literally, like just imagine you're on the highway. The guy that is literally right in the next lane, he's literally driving one hand and petting not a dog, not a cat,
Not even like a big German shepherd or
not
anything
even
like that.
holding hands with like a girl or a guy.
We do not discriminate here.
We do not discriminate here. Is petting a literal tiger, which is just so crazy. And I made the joke like, hey, imagine if like someone just pulled him over and was like, sir, do you know how fast you were? Never mind. You have a good one.
Right this way, sir.
Yeah,
no,
you
so
have
sorry
a
to
good
have
one.
troubled you. I
Yeah.
pulled over the wrong person.
Yeah.
I made a mistake. So sorry.
Yeah. It's very interesting, but good way to just, again, like, recenter just, like, who this guy is and, like, what his, like, aura is and whatnot.
Yeah.
And, like, the entire episode and even in the other episodes, how he claims, I am the Tiger King.
Yeah.
And
he does it a lot in this episode.
In this episode,
yeah.
they really, really, really dive into that. So I think it was a perfect way to start off the episode because it was just like, okay, only he can do that.
Oh yeah, it's the perfect intro of just his self-indulgence.
Yeah.
And like you get this feeling like, okay, maybe Carol and Doc are just as narcissistic in their own time. But even they wouldn't be stupid enough to just do it on camera like that, Like, but it's just such an exclusively Joe Exotic thing.
Yeah. And, it's very, very interesting how it starts off and then just carries on after that.
That's right. So after that, which is great, I agree with you. It's a fantastic intro. We transition into speaking about the influence of social media. We see a lot of pictures of Joe holding up cubs and taking pictures with models and taking pictures with the cubs, trying to boost his online platform. You have an insight into Carol's look and how she markets herself. You get to hear Doc speaking about how Carol's influence is really huge, how she supersedes all the zoos. When you look her up, Big Cat Rescue, she's the #1 most popular tiger facility in the country. So it kind of sets the stage for how powerful and influential this woman is and how big of an outreach that Big Cat Rescue has.
That and also, I guess, like, how powerful social media really is.
Yeah.
And I guess that's also why... Just quickly, that would be one of the points why this one kind of connected with me. Considering both personal and also, my writing career. Social media and I have a very interesting relationship. Because right now I'm still in the process of writing my social media, inspired futuristic movie.
Oh, right.
And talking about like how powerful really social media really is. So... It was very interesting to see, like, exactly like what you said, seeing her online portfolio and then, help me out. It was either Doc or it was the guy that has the 2 prosthetic legs.
Oh, Renke?
That he said Joe just then knew he had to do something.
That was Renke.
Yeah.
Renke. So Renke says... that Joe tried to stand up to Carol and all of the influence that she had. Because obviously with Carol's influence is a loud voice of saying, hey, here's this Joe Exotic guy in Oklahoma. He's doing really bad things. So most of the big cat people, and Tim Stark even says this, like, listen, just keep your head down, nod your head, go away, be the bigger man. Don't start a war you can't win. Which is probably the most intelligent thing Tim has ever said.
And help me out. That one's the guy from Miami, right?
He was Indiana. He has the cowboy hat.
Yes.
He was friends with Joe and Doc.
Yes. That's the one that was like, I don't give an F about how many?
How to Train Your Animals.
Yes,
Teach me how to train those women.
Yeah, yep.
That was him. It's Tim Stark, very interesting character. But yeah, he actually has a very insightful thing to say.
Yeah.
Joe should have just left it alone. Joe
Yeah.
should have just minded his own business. But instead, he does the most Joe Exotic thing he can do. He fights back.
He plants his feet and he says, "Absolutely not."
So what Joe does, and it's just so laughable. It's the most Joe Exotic thing you can do. A, because it's so ruthless, and B, because it's so stupid.
Yeah.
He renames his traveling show Big Cat Rescue Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So when people look for Big Cat Rescue, his facility and his business will pop up instead of Carol's. It's like Doc says in the beginning. When you look up big cats and tigers and whatnot, Carol's place will be the first to show up.
Yes.
Joe doesn't like that. Joe wants to be the first place to show up. So he tries to copy her, and not just in name, he makes the logo look like the masthead from the Big Cat Rescue website, the snow leopard eyes.
Yes.
It's the exact same image. So, of course, this is illegal.
Yeah, and it was also Rinky said, I don't know if it's exactly the same, but like it's
pretty close.
It's pretty close, yeah.
He couldn't defend it.
Yeah, I think he wanted to say, yeah, it's the same exact.
Yeah.
He was on camera.
He had to defend his buddy.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of these people tend to do.
Yeah.
So obviously this is illegal, and Howard says, well, we couldn't get him on the cub petting because that was legal, so we decided to get him on this. So essentially Joe's form of payback actually ended up kind of burying his own grave. Yeah, it was such a stupid decision, and it's so funny to think about how he thought that would work.
Yeah, it's like he shot himself in the foot.
Exactly.
Like
And he blamed it on Carol.
Yeah. No, literally. And yeah, it was definitely interesting. You know, we were both laughing our butts off just like seeing like the comparisons and whatnot, because we were just like, are you kidding
Come
me?
on,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. What was so interesting though was realizing like how long ago this was, because like you have, you know, the time jump, because you have 2016, you have Howard going through the files.
And he's got files on files on files. Eric Good, yeah.
Eric Good, yeah.
Like, is this whole file cabinet dedicated to Joe?
And he's like,
and
it's
actually all of these file cabinets, and then this one over here.
And then he has a box, like a long box.
Yep.
Almost like ones you would keep for comic books.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, and this is just the current stuff. So that's like about 2 full file cabinets.
Yeah.
And 1 long box on just Joe Exotic.
Just to give you an idea of how deep this went between Joe and Carol.
So then it's 2016, and then it goes all the way back to 2012.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. And I have to say that, you know, dude's crazy. Dude's just absolutely wild and out of his gourd. But man, he had a really cool shirt. That Iron Man shirt was so cool.
It was a very cool Iron Man shirt.
It was a really good one.
It was very 2012 too.
Yes.
So like that style. I'm like, I feel like you saw a lot of shirts like that back in 2012.
Oh yeah, because that was God, I always forget the guy's name. But the one that was doing Invincible Iron Man at that point.
Okay.
I think it was more like 2007, because that's when the comic book came out.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, like that's really cool design. I just had to point that out.
Yeah. No, definitely.
But yeah, no, it was very, very interesting, because honestly, last episode we said that the last one was the weakest one.
Yeah.
Because it only focused on one thing and one thing only. This one felt like Tiger King again.
Yes,
because
for sure.
It goes to, okay, here's a rivalry. But guess what? That's not it. We're also going to talk about that, you know, Joe Exotic wanted to take it to the next level and did a reality TV show and
with Rick Kirkham, right?
Rick Kirkham. And then when doing that, that's when he was doing his online show. So then Rick Kirkham, correct me if I'm wrong, he wanted to make the reality show because he knew that this was like going to be a hit.
Yes, yeah.
And I again, help me out.
Mm-hmm.
The people for the online show, they were like, okay, you could record your reality
Mm-hmm.
show, but you have to record
Yeah.
the online show.
Yeah. Well, it was exactly that, but it was like in the opposite direction. It was Joe hired Rick Kirkham to make the online show.
Right.
And Kirkham says, okay, totally, Joe, we'll absolutely do that for you on one condition. You let us film a reality show behind the scenes while
Yeah.
you guys are making this and at other moments during the park. Joe, who loves being on front of the camera more than anybody, is probably absolutely, yes, over the moon with joy, anything for more exposure. So that was kind of the only thing Kirkham cared about. Kirkham doesn't really care about Joe Exotic's whole anti-animal rights
Yeah.
web show that only like 50 people tune into.
Yeah, he said, he said, yeah, I'll record your dumb little
Yep.
online show if I can do this, because this right here is the money.
This is going to be my retirement.
exactly,
This is going to
yeah.
make me $1 million.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I mean, he was right to think that
was.
when you think about what Tiger King turned into.
Absolutely. And it's funny because that's what the show is called.
Yep.
The reality show is called The Tiger King.
The Tiger King, that's
the
right.
Tiger King, yeah.
So it's so funny how that works out, and it makes me feel kind of bad for
Yeah.
Kirkham, with what
No,
ended
yeah.
up happening.
Like, you almost kind of wish, like, that there was some sort of, when they were doing this one, they were like, hey, listen, if we make X amount, you get, like, little bit or something.
Yeah.
I don't really know. But what was interesting was, when doing that, it was just, again, it was the fast pace again. It was just
Yes.
okay, well, when this was happening, this also was happening at the
Yep.
same exact time. Because it was like, as they were still talking about the reality show, they didn't stop talking about the rivalry between him and Carol.
Yeah.
And that was also, very crazy and very entertaining. And, you also see, something super wild, which was that he also, it reminded me of almost like the beginning of episode 1. Because he was like, instructing them, being like, wait a minute, don't cut the camera yet, because he's pulling out the gun.
Yep.
And he's like doing the walk and
Yep.
like all that. And then Kirkham was like, okay, I'll build you a throne and we'll put you right in the cage
Yep.
with all the tigers. And what Kirkham says is that there was one time when he finally showed him like the intro, that night he heard Joe in his office playing it over and over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
And exactly like what we said for the intro, that is the most Joe Exotic thing you can think of.
It's narcissism at its finest.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, I want to mention something we had glanced over a little bit.
Yeah.
Was with Big Cat Rescue Entertainment. When Eric Good asks him why he named it that, he said it's because we're the biggest in the world. What does he say again? We're the biggest in the world at rescuing big cats, and we entertain people.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you didn't even try.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's Joe Exotic to a T, and I agree with you. I love how it keeps up the momentum of the first few episodes of Tiger King. It really brings it back to topic after topic after topic, and trying to weave it all together into this crazy little I don't know, like organized mess.
Yeah.
It's a totally neatly organized.
It's like organized crime almost.
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of it is
yeah,
organized
no,
crime.
exactly. But something very interesting as the episode keeps on going is Kirkham says something that stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
He said he had a policy of 24/7, the cameras were rolling. No
Yep.
matter what.
Mm-hmm.
He said he never stopped rolling. And he told everybody, just keep recording, because he just knew, and he said it himself, I was there 24/7 and I really got to see. And there was never a moment where I didn't, like, he was like, I got to know who this guy was.
Mm-hmm.
There was not a single moment that I didn't want to record.
Yeah.
And then it you still hear about, again, his hatred for Carol,
Yeah.
and that also goes very, very, very crazy
Yeah.
because, you have him not only saying that he hates Carol and he's threatening Carol and
Mm-hmm.
doing this and doing that, but on his own online show,
Mm-hmm.
he has a blow up doll
Mm-hmm.
that says Carol on it, and he says, "This is what I would do if I ever see Carol in person." And he just takes out a gun and shoots the blow up doll.
Yep.
And yeah,
Yeah. Very intense.
again, only Joe Exotic could do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's like, this is where the things about Joe start to get a little frightening.
Yes.
Because that's a threat.
Yeah.
And you, like, you're enjoying the fun antics and the stupidity of Joe Exotic, and you see stuff like that, and you're like, okay, this guy might be kind of unhinged.
Yeah, like it's the same exact thing in episode 1. Anybody tries to take away my tigers, it's going to be a small wake up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I got an AK-47 under my mattress.
Exactly.
Loaded,
Yeah.
ready to roll.
Yep. And again, with keeping up with the pace, you also have this very subtopic, but it gets its glamour
Yeah.
of that. Some lady in Florida sent Joe Exotic a picture of Carol's workers taking pictures with bunnies that look like they've been like bashed to death almost.
Yep.
And you have these workers smiling in these pictures.
Smiling
like,
ear to ear, very
Yeah.
happy, and they've got dead bunnies in their
yeah,
hands.
not just dead bunnies, but like
bloody, like freshly killed.
Yeah.
It looks like freshly killed bunnies. I don't know if they actually were, but it does look like that. Yeah.
And to me, it almost looked like you almost saw like the neck of like you saw like bone almost sticking out.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like because like you saw like obviously like the body, but you kind of almost saw something like sticking out, where it's like wow, like this wasn't just like oh a bunny died. It was like no, like bunny was killed.
Yep.
So then it starts a little bit of a stir. Like wait a minute,
It's perfect fuel for Joe.
Yes.
That's for sure. And I do have to wonder why the team at Big Cat Rescue thought that was a good idea.
yes, because obviously Joe capitalizes on it and starts this whole well this lady smiles,
Yep.
beats bunnies and smiles, and Carol's response is Pat.
Carol's response was that the reason they were smiling was because the tigers finally had something to eat because they'd been short on food for that month or whatever. So she was upset that Joe had turned it into this whole thing that she was an animal abuser and a bunny killer and whatnot. And listen, I understand that.
Yeah.
Like, tigers need to eat and they need to eat a lot. And
Right.
Of course, they need to eat mammals. You can't just feed them, bugs and leaves and stuff.
And
like, of
bark
course.
and whatnot. Yeah.
They're going to eat smaller animals that are beautiful and nice and we probably love to pet on the side of the road or whatever, but that's their prey. What the practicality was of taking the picture,
Yeah.
I could not tell you.
Yeah.
I've got no defense for that.
'Cause it's
That's
almost-
very strange
Yeah.
to me.
And it's almost like you're asking for trouble.
Oh
if you
yeah,
take that picture.
that does make me
Nobody
wonder.
knows the story behind it.
Yeah, I don't know the entire story behind it either, and you do wonder. Yeah, like why would you do that when Joe Exotic, it is not against attacking you for things even if you didn't do them.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy Joe Exotic is.
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect point because Howard says the quote, Joe Exotic doesn't see lying as a morally wrong thing, but he
said that about a fundraiser.
But what did he say? He said Joe Exotic doesn't.
Oh, I forget. He says something about lying that he said Joe Exotic viewed it in a different way.
It was
I
something.
forget what it was. Like it was a personality trait or it was
It was like
something?
something like that.
Yeah.
It was basically the quote was that like Joe doesn't see lying as a bad thing,
Yeah.
just something to make money on.
I think so. That sounds
It was
right.
something
Yeah.
around that area. And yeah, it's very, very, very interesting because, again, as this entirety of these two things keep going, you then start to hear, okay, wait a minute. You kind of hear the. This episode is a lot of cause and effect.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And this is why I also like this episode because, each thing mattered because this thing
Yeah.
is causing this to happen.
It's more of a story
Yes.
than the first 3 episodes.
And what this is because of all this money, all this time, all this energy is put into this lawsuit between the two of them.
Yep.
You start hearing and you see it that Joe is starting to, and it's funny, not financially recover from this.
Yes, he is in financial trouble. As if he
Yes.
wasn't before, now he really is. And it's not good. And, it's all his fault. Because he tried to mimic Carol's logo in a very obvious way. It wasn't clever. It wasn't sneaky. It didn't abide by the law. It was just flagrant copyright infringement, and he had to face the penalty for it. And Carol and Howard wisely went after him. Sebby just cracked open a seltzer, and he's smiling for some reason, so that made me laugh.
Yeah, tried to do it super nonchalant, but as soon as
good.
I opened it, I was like, "Oh, that's not gonna be a quiet thing." So,
Guy's got to get his beverage. Nothing wrong with that.
Shout out again to Schweppes. You guys have been sponsoring a lot of
There you go.
myself with these podcasts, so shout out to Schweppes.
Much better than a soda, because I just had a Coke. Seltzer's much better for you folks.
Yes, but continue.
Yeah, but so obviously, like we said before, Joe shot himself in the foot, getting himself in this lawsuit. Should have listened to Tim Stark. Doc
Should listen
Antle.
to everybody.
Yeah.
You had Ranky.
Ranky said the same thing. They
He
all
said
told
the same
him.
exact thing. And
Yeah.
John, his husband, he also said he was
Oh,
like,
everybody. Eric Cowie said that he was getting to.
I'm pretty sure Saf also said something.
Probably. They must all have. I've known the other zookeepers have.
Yeah.
They don't mention it in the show, but besides Tim Stark, Doc Antle absolutely has. I'm sure Mario Tabraue and Mark McCarthy have. It's just one of those things that everybody in the industry told him, like, Joe, you talk way too much. You got to keep your head down.
And Ranky said something that also stood out to me was he said, I don't mean to be on my high horse, but I was very glad that I was here when
that
this
was
happened.
Eric Cowie, the one with the long hair.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. So it wasn't Ranky, it was Eric Cowie. But he said, I don't want to get on my high horse, but
I was glad I was there.
glad I was
Sure.
there because he then gets to discuss, and you also see it, that he almost tends to forget his main responsibility.
It's to the tigers and
It's
to
to the
all
tigers,
the other animals.
But his energy, his money, his focus is just to bring this lady down.
That's right. Yep.
And that then affects his business, his entire career, his entire life.
Yep.
You have the workers getting affected. You have the tigers getting affected. You have everything that because they then discuss that he loses the lawsuit.
Yeah. And he's got to pay
he-
$1 million.
$1 million. And he then realizes the way to make his money is by breeding cubs again.
And this is where a big problem comes in, is
Yes.
because that's the big money maker. Like Joe says at the start of the series, you could profit $100,000 per cub. It's a very lucrative industry. Everybody wants to pet a cub.
Yeah.
However, Carol is fervently anti-cub petting.
Yes.
So the deal that Howard and Joe make, because Carol and Joe probably can't stomach speaking to each other,
Yeah.
they try to come to the conclusion.
It was like a peace treaty. It was almost like
It
as if
was
the
a
North
bit like
and
a
the
peace.
South
Yeah,
made a peace treaty. Like, okay, let's. Like the loser went up to the winner and said, "You win. I need help because I cannot pay this. So what can we agree on?"
it was almost as if Joe was being humbled in a way, because
Yes.
he was saying, "Okay, you win. I'll pay the $1 million. Tell me what you want. This, that, and the other thing."
Yep.
So Howard comes to a pretty reasonable agreement.
Yeah.
I think even Joe would say that at first, that they'd pay less in the winter and more in the summer because peak hours are summer.
Yep.
Totally fair. You know, it's cool that they seem to have an understanding there. But the big thing they said, you can't cub pet anymore.
Yep.
You can't do that because obviously that's what's creating this industry. That's what's creating the illegal trafficking. That's what's creating the massive surplus of tigers in the world because cubs are only good for a certain amount of time and then they become useless.
Right.
So you got to keep breeding and breeding and breeding so you can let customers pet cubs all year round. That's
Yeah.
how you bring in the cash flow.
And Joe makes a point and he says, well, how do you expect me to
Exactly,
pay this money without what's going to make me money?
Mm-hmm. And then you wonder on the other end, okay, well, Carol and Howard can't just say yes to that because then, in a way, they're supporting the cub petting industry
Yeah.
if they take that money. So,
You became the thing you swore to destroy.
exactly. So, without having to agree with anybody per se, you understand both sides of the argument.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
it's very fair. Like, of course, Carol and Howard can't just say, okay, fine, you could do the cub petting so we can get our $1,000,000. They look like the biggest hypocrites in the world. I mean,
Absolutely.
the zoo people already try to make them look like hypocrites because they have cats in cages.
Yeah.
If they were to take money from cub petting, it's game over.
Right.
They'd have no leg to stand on.
Game over, man. Game over.
But if you take cub petting out of the picture, Joe's just got this backyardsy dog pound of a place
Yeah.
that nobody would probably want to go to.
Right. I mean, and you again, you see the effect of all this because you have Joe he's yelling at his workers and he's like, well, you guys just going to stand there or like you're going to let the tigers out to feed them?
Yeah.
And one of the workers says there's like 14 tigers or I think there's like 30 something tigers and we can only feed like 14 or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they had no money. They were really cutting costs. Like Eric Howie says, they couldn't even afford to feed the wolves,
Yeah.
let alone the tigers. Which, if you do it right, according to Doc Antle, it's $10,000 a year to feed each tiger.
Yep.
Even by Joe's metric, it's $3,000. They couldn't even afford that.
Yep. And that's when he starts doing, okay, well, they're only getting like half of what they usually
Yep.
eat.
And you see so many tigers.
Yeah.
Poured into all of these cramped little cages.
Yeah.
And it's quite a scary thing to see. It's a
Yeah.
very disturbing thing to see.
And again, I think that would also be another point why I like this episode because not only do they show that, but they show that and they make it at a point where everything is so vulnerable. You know, Joe is also like he doesn't cry obviously, but
Right.
you can tell he's very upset by this.
Yeah, definitely.
He's stressed out, he's overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have that, you see these tigers, you hear the music that's playing. You know, you hear everybody being like, yeah, I thought we were done. I thought that, this was over. And not only this, but you then have the next point, which is that
Before you get to that,
Right.
because obviously that's kind of like the big crescendo of the episode, I do want to mention too what I like about what we've seen about the vulnerability. We also see what happens as a result of Joe's instability, and it's a lot of animal abuse. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Keeping
Yeah.
these tigers in as poor conditions as they are, cutting their food supply in half, and it was already poor because they
Yeah.
were getting it off of expired Walmart meat trucks and from dead cows they find in feeding lots.
Yeah.
So they already didn't get the highest quality care that they could have. Now it's somehow even worse, and you've got all of these tigers, well over 200 tigers, cramped into these tiny little spaces, into areas that look like they don't even have good vegetation. I mean, everything looks very like dirty. Everything looks
Yeah.
very muddy, and
Yeah.
it's just like this is no space for a big cat to live in.
Yeah.
And then with the increase in breeding that Joe has to do to try and stay afloat, you've got cubs that are being separated from their mother, which is what all of them do, because
Yeah.
that makes them easier to imprint on humans. So
Yeah,
that wasn't a
that
result
was
of Joe's dire straits. That's just what the big cat people do.
yeah, and that was a part in the episode that both you and I we both made just
It's
like
very
very
it's very hard not to cringe at that scene. And the
yeah
big thing is when they're birthing it and they're bringing the cub out to see what sex it is, they're using like a pooper scooper
yeah,
to just hook it in, and it's just so.
and then not only that, but they're yanking on this cub
Yeah, this it was just
under
born
under
the
this like
fence.
little
Yep.
little crevice, and like you see the cub itself, like it's screaming, it's crying because it's getting yanked
From its mother.
yeah, and then you see another animal abuse when Joe's in his house, and you see just this pile of cubs, and he's yelling at them to stop crying.
Yeah, he
And
put them in a little baby crib.
Yeah,
For
and-
humans.
and he literally said,
I can't take this
I
anymore.
can't take this
right?
anymore. I had to sleep in the studio, and I finally
Made it
got
all
some
about
sleep.
him.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was almost like boohoo, like forget about these tigers. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting my sleep.
The supposed animal lover who gave his life for animals.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I need to sleep. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
you brought these tigers into the world, man, and you're going to use them for your own benefit and to make money. And for some reason, you can't put up with baby tigers crying because, A, that's what baby tigers do. B, they're probably in the worst condition a tiger could possibly be in.
That, and also, they're stripped away from their mother.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. What do you expect?
I'm 20 something years old. I can't even imagine, like being separated from my mother. Like a day in, I'd be crying.
Sure.
Everybody would be crying.
There you go. Imagine a little, 2-week-old tiger.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it was like a 5-minute born tiger.
Mm-hmm.
At the point where it's getting pulled out, and as this is going on, it's almost like it's gonna get worse.
Somehow, yes.
Somehow.
It is going to get worse.
Before it got better, it got worse,
Oh, yeah.
and worse is an understatement.
Definitely.
Um,
In every way you could imagine.
yes. So, Pat, why don't you explain what we are talking about?
So, amidst all of the controversy, the legal battles, all of the cubs that are being born, even though they can't afford to feed the animals that they have now.
Which is why, like, also again, this one was back to Tiger King.
Yes.
Because as this next topic is starting to unfold, you're still hearing about everything else. It's this whirlpool, exactly like what we said. It's controlled chaos because it's literally this tornado of things, and like they're just somehow
It all fits together.
blending together.
Yep. Yeah, it's very impressive. The
Yeah.
people who edited the show are very good at their jobs. So, amidst all of this insanity that is brewing for the people at the GW Zoo, you've got the controversy with Carol Baskin. You've got the inability to feed the cats that they need to feed. You've got the one thing that seems to be going right in Joe's mind.
Yeah.
That's the show that he seems to really like. He loves the footage of him on the throne. I am the Tiger King. Taking the video, watching it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The studio where all the footage is held burns to the ground.
Yes.
So
There's an
That's gone.
unexpected fire, and Rick Kirkham.
Rick
No.
Kirkham is he it's his footage. Like he shot it all.
Rick Kirkham said, "I just fell to my knees and just started crying."
Yep, that was his whole retirement in
And,
there.
Yep, he said that was literally exactly what you said. He said that was my retirement. That was what was gonna be his final thing, and it's crazy because the first people that talk about it are the security guards,
Right.
which is
right.
very interesting because and again, it was like a perfect setup because I don't remember who said it and what they exactly said, but it was something along the lines of before it happened, and then it
Oh
shows
yeah, right.
that a specific part of the zoo is being burned.
Yep.
And you hear the security guards talking, and you see that they're getting interviewed, and they bring up the point that Joe was away for a funeral.
Yes. Well, before they bring up that point, they say without a shadow of a doubt it was arson. It was
Yes,
absolutely a
yes,
controlled
yes,
fire. It
yes.
wasn't like a gas leak. It wasn't an accident. Somebody burnt it down purposefully.
That, and also, unfortunately, not only was that a studio, but that was where the alligators
Yes.
were kept. And unfortunately, as expected, they all burned and they all died.
Yeah. So this is what we mean when we said it got worse. Not only did it get worse for Joe, it got worse for the animals because
Yeah.
now you have animals that are dead as a result of the chaos that ensued in Joe Exotic's GW Exotic Animal Park. So before we bring that point up that you just mentioned, people theorize that it could have been Rick Kirkham that did it.
Yes.
And you might think, well, why would he do it? He's the last person you'd expect to do it. That's his retirement. That's the show that he was working on. Allegedly, according to Joe,
Yes.
Rick Kirkham got a Facebook message from Carol saying, you don't know who you're working with, and I want that footage that you have so that I can use it
Yes.
for and we can expose them together and whatnot, and I'll pay you for it. And
Yeah.
allegedly,
Handsomely.
this is what Joe says.
Yes.
Nobody else confirms
Right.
this. Carol confirms, yes, I did message Rick Kirkham on Facebook, but I was just trying to warn him about the person he was working
like
with.
you don't know who you're working for.
Yeah, I didn't offer him any money. There was no settlement, anything like that. So, interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. We already know Kirkham doesn't like Joe. We know that
They have some sort of feud.
they've got some beef. He is uncomfortable working there. He's seen a lot of things. And he speaks in retrospect about the addictive power of exotic animal ownership and how wrong it is. That said, in the first episode, Kirkham says he doesn't like Carol either.
Yeah.
He says Carol's just as bad as Joe. So, hard to say.
Yeah, and also unfortunately, at this point, this is when he gives in his camera and he says, "I'm done."
Yeah.
And he
He
walks
looks
away.
destroyed. Yeah.
And he said he literally had a mental breakdown. He took everything he had, which was at this point just his dog, in his car, and he left.
Honestly, you can't blame the guy.
No,
you know?
absolutely not. And it was very interesting because then in the security footage you see a guy, and not only is it just like a random guy, but a guy that walks a little awkwardly.
Yeah, and you think about it's like, well, Kirkham's a big, lengthy guy who's like, slouches a lot. His posture's kind of bad. Could be him.
Yeah,
And Ranky is convinced that it's Kirkham.
Yeah, and Kirkham then counters it and goes, well, people that came up to me and was like, oh well, or like me hearing that it was me, he was like, are you out of your effing mind? Like that was like my work.
Yep.
And not only does it get to that point, but it, you then see, okay, you didn't just poke the tiger, you didn't just poke the bear, you unhooked the cage, you opened it, you doused yourself in raw meat, and you just like shook your body and said dinner is served.
Yep.
Because Joe Exotic then goes and obviously points it straight to Carol. It was Carol, it was Carol, it was Carol.
It's got to be linked to Carol somehow.
Not only does he do that, but he kind of does a very Empire-ish thing and says, I will pay a ransom almost of anybody that can give me information on either the arrest or any information.
Well, no, that's a little different. That's not even you're thinking about not even conviction, just arrest.
Yeah.
Different character that we meet later.
No, he also said it after.
Oh, he says something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It was something like.
But he does say, like, I think like $10,000 reward for
And then he
anybody.
said he'll double it if
Yeah.
something. I forget what it was.
I don't even know if he mentions Carol specifically. I think he says just the animal rights
Yes,
people.
yes.
Because he's like, if it wasn't Rick Kirkham, it was one of the animal rights people who did this.
Mm-hmm. And then it brings up an interesting point.
Very interesting.
Because not only do they then start theorizing, okay, animal rights activists, Carol, Rick Kirkham, then some way, somehow, they bring in another interesting point, which then starts to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, Pat, what do they say? Who is the man responsible behind this?
There are people. John Finley was one. I don't remember some of the others.
I think Kirkham also said that.
Kirkham, I could see.
He
Kirkham
was also
saying
talking
yeah.
that he might think it was him.
Yeah, that it could have been Joe Exotic. And I think the first thing they do is actually by Joe Exotic's own confession on tape. He says there's video. This is before the shed burns to the ground. There's video of Renke doing veterinary work on a tiger without a veterinarian present.
Yep.
That's illegal, and that could get us into a lot of trouble.
Yep.
So he says all of that, and then he gets into a dispute with Kirkham and says, "You don't own me."
Yes.
Kirkham says, "Actually, Joe, I
do." Takes out contract.
Which is probably the worst thing you could say to a narcissist like Joe Exotic.
Yes. And then not only does that happen, but then we see a hidden camera and you hear a conversation between Joe Exotic and his lawyer.
Yep.
And what does his lawyer say, Pat?
He says, I forget exactly what it is. He says something about it's all on footage.
They
right?
start talking about like the footage and whatnot, and then the lawyer then says, "Okay, well, where's the footage then?" And then Joe Exotic says, "It's in the studio." And then
the lawyer says, "You see what I'm saying?"
He says, "That's the only copy, right?" And then Joe says, "Yes." And you don't hear what they say,
of course,
but you hear almost
because they probably don't say anything.
But you kind of almost hear like the
maybe I don't remember. I'd have to rewatch it.
Kind of can hear like when mouths still move, but you don't hear it.
That's true. Yeah.
And then his lawyer then says, "You see what I'm saying?" So then that's when people start thinking, okay, he might have hired someone because, again, he wasn't there.
That's right.
He was supposedly going to a funeral out of town.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. So to quickly then go to the next point, all things seem lost. It looks like this might be the end for GW Zoo. Mm-hmm. And again, the editors, the cinematographers, the directors themselves are so darn good at their job because they do that thing of like all hope is lost, and then you just see this big truck driving
a white Hummer,
and you just see this guy that he doesn't even have to say a word, and you're already like, okay, this is not over, and he's going to do something that's going to continue this battle.
That's right.
And you then are introduced to Pat.
Jeff Lowe. So this man comes onto the scene that presents himself as an investor, somebody who takes interest in the park because he's got a history with big cats himself. He owned big cats since he was a teenager. His grandfather supposedly had the world's largest menagerie of big cats.
Yes.
Worked for Ringling Brothers Circus, I think it was.
Yeah.
Very prolific figure, born with tigers in his crib. So
his first, I think it was a jaguar or leopard or
something like that.
He got him when he was 16.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they also said, you had some of the workers that they said, well, for some reason, we just donned him the Godfather.
We dubbed him the Godfather because he was going to help us. And
yep.
He came from this big fancy mansion in Nevada and Las Vegas, and he had this, indoor pool that Joe and his husband Travis were hanging out at. And the mic still picked it up.
Yep, I know.
It's all good. It's kind of hard to hide.
Yeah.
But so he just seemed like the type of person that Joe Exotic could trust. I say that with very coded language. Joe Exotic.
Yes.
Not no regular person would ever meet Jeffrey Lowe and say that seems like a trustworthy guy.
Yes, because Seth says it that when when he was introduced
Mm-hmm.
to Jeff Lowe, he said I forgot who introduced Jeff Lowe
I think
to him,
Joe did.
and he said,
This is our new investor,
yeah,
which was a little dishonest, but whatever. Jeff and Joe have a mutual hatred of Carol Baskin.
mm-hmm.
So Jeff helps Joe advertise on his internet show to try and, get any information that could link Carol to the disappearance of Don Lewis. So Joe's like, I really, really like this guy. He is very abrasive, right to the point kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's yelling at Howard on the phone
And the lawyer.
and the lawyer about trying to come to an agreement about stopping the cub petting. And in no uncertain terms, Jeff just says, that's a terrible idea. How are we supposed to make our money? And
that's when the lawyer's like, "Excuse me, who's on this call?"
he says, Jeff Lowe.
And
Last I checked, I was in a free effing country. And I'm
yep,
still
I
here.
woke up and I was in a free effing country, and I'm still here.
And Joe loves this.
Yes.
Joe's like, I can't get enough of this guy.
Yep.
The thing about Jeff, and yeah, plot twist, he's not trustworthy at all.
Nope,
Not
not a
to
good
any
guy.
not that any of these Tiger King people are. But
Yes.
I think the difference with him, and I think why it's so easy to kind of hate him right off the bat, is kind of like the way he presents himself.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And like, say whatever you want about Joe, Carol, and Doc. There's something about their demeanor that's like, they're like cartoon characters. They're like almost kind of fun to
Yeah,
watch their insanity.
Absolutely. I mean, and you even said it yourself yesterday. They still, they have their outlandish and completely wrong things about them. They still try to be professional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeff Lowe is just the complete opposite, where he's
like a total sleazebag.
yeah, and he just doesn't care. Mm-hmm. He doesn't hide it.
The thing about the other three is their eccentricities between the way they dress and the way they talk and the way they present themselves. There's something about it that's like, okay, this is scummy and weird and really bad, but man, is this a fun train wreck, and is it
Yes.
wild to see these guys interact with each other. And then Jeff Lowe comes into the picture, and he's dressed head to toe in this leather, and he's like this like really lame looking biker dude. Like,
Yeah.
a 13-year-old from the 90s probably thinks this guy is cool. And that's
Yes.
about the extent to which you could put it. And it's almost like he's coming in and ruining the fun of the other guys.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to just hate this guy as soon as he comes on screen.
Yeah. And then, surprise, surprise, he has his own reason why people don't like him. And,
Yeah, for sure. It just, the stuff that he does, again, he exploits animals.
yes.
He exploits people.
Yep.
Um,
And he uses the animals not just for money, but to keep it as PG as possible. He uses it for women.
yes. A lot like Doc Antle.
Yes.
A lot like Joe,
Yeah.
in many respects. But Joe and Doc,
Still respect the tigers enough. Well, whereas this guy,
they at least present themselves as having respected the Tigers enough and running a zoo.
yeah.
You
Whereas
know?
this guy just stuffs cubs in a suitcase.
Yeah.
Takes them to a hotel, and just picks up girls, and then just for the night uses the tigers to get
impress
these
the girls.
Yeah.
And, because what's more impressive than a baby tiger?
Yep.
Nope. Not a lot of people are going around Vegas with tigers in suitcases. And, but it's very disgusting behavior.
Yeah.
But it's the exact kind of guy Joe Exotic would think is cool, realistically. And we learn more about him, and Joe finally decides he's going to hand over assets to Jeff.
Yes.
And a point we didn't bring up before is in Joe's legal troubles, he thinks he can evade Carol by handing over ownership to different people.
So at first it was his husband,
John Finlay, yeah. And then it was maybe one or two other people. And then it was his mom. And his mom didn't even really know what she was doing. She was just signing over something that she thought would help her son.
Yep.
And then Carol obviously comes after his mom in court because she's trying to bring down Joe.
Yeah.
And
anybody involved, the owner of the GW Zoo, at that point, it's John, it's her, and it's basically everybody.
Right. And it's easy to use Carol as a scapegoat. Like, oh, Carol, you're stooping so low. You're coming after my mom. It's like, no, Joe, that's you. Yeah. That's your fault.
That's your fault.
You're throwing your mom under the bus and using her as bait.
Yeah, like you're dragging her down with you.
It's one of the scummiest things he's done on the show so far. It's really,
100%.
really bad.
100%. And, you know, it's like as this whirling dervish is still going on, you then, you know, it's getting towards like the 10-minute mark of the last 10 minutes of the show.
10 minutes.
And then Joe makes an interesting point, and he says, it was around this time that I got to meet the real Jeff Lowe.
And Lauren Lowe.
And Lauren Lowe.
Yeah, we didn't mention his wife, Lauren.
Yes.
Once again, with the big cat people, significant age gap there.
It's kind of almost like their resume. There have to be something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's what a strange pattern that they all seem to go for people who are significantly younger than them. But so Jeff and Lauren Lowe, who both seem to be just as evil as each other in many respects, assets to the park are handed over to Jeff. Jeff now owns GW Exotic Animal Park, and he presents it as if it's in his name so he can help Joe through these legal battles, and he can get him out on top, and then it can be Joe's zoo again. And Joe says that's when the evil side of Jeff and Lauren came out.
Yes. And what was interesting about it was at the time that Joe is saying this, you have Jeff and Lauren both playing with an adult lion.
Yeah.
An adult lion. And again, these editors, these people are so good at their job.
It was a very impressively cut together scene.
Right as when Joe finishes his sentence, it then goes like that. And the mood of the lion just changes immediately to like being like playful and like allowing both of them. And then you then just see Jeff basically wrestling with the lion, and then you hear him go, Lauren, get out of here. And then you just see basically like Jeff push the lion away, and you almost see that the lion is charging at him.
Yep.
And then they turn on the hose and they almost like scare away the lion.
Jeff's got a bloody hand, but he gets out with his life.
Yeah.
And he even says, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
And that's how the episode ends.
Well, not quite.
It's not?
We get some other feedbacks from some other people, or some lack thereof.
Yes. Okay.
Who is maybe a hard question, maybe a loaded question, but, and we already talked about this, who is the biggest loudmouth on the show?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Doc Antle. And
when he's asked about Jeff Lowe, he says, only allegedly, not my business.
Yep.
He starts laughing almost nervously. He's like, listen, I know it's all on camera, what's wrong with Jeff, until one day this becomes a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Which is a smart answer. But it goes to show you just how much there must be with Jeff Lowe.
Because Pat brought up a very great point as after we were talking about the episode. There is not a single topic that Doc did not voice his opinion on.
Doc's got everything to say about everybody.
Everything. Even things about himself.
Oh.
Himself?
Probably especially about himself.
Himself, Joe, Carol, Howard, Don, everybody.
PETA, everybody, yeah.
Everybody. But when it comes to this one man, he just almost does the, I don't even want to any part of this.
It's just wild to think about.
Because then you're like, wait a minute. Who really is this guy?
Who is this guy?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you get that. And so the episode doesn't quite end on the lion footage. It's right there.
Yeah.
This woman who used to work for the GW Zoo is asked by Eric Good what happened next, and she says Jeff Lowe stole the zoo.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And you start to wonder, like, okay, I can kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together, but what specifically happened here?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, also, we hear Joe on the phone says, I
Yes.
didn't know that the mansion was a rental. I didn't know that he
Yes.
was behind on Ferrari payments. So
Yes.
this
That's
guy's
right.
a fraud.
Yep.
He's a professional scam artist, and he
Yep.
got Joe.
Mm-hmm.
So now we got to see what happens next with this guy.
Yep. And that's it for episode 4 of Tiger King.
That's right. That's right. And I'm glad that it's your second favorite so far, because it is a very solid episode.
Oh yeah. So because we have 2 topics that we have been wanting to talk about, we'll make this very quick back and forth. Pat, scale from 1 to 10, what would you say for this episode?
It's kind of hard. I think I might go 8.5.
Okay.
Only because I know there's more to come that I will give a higher rating, and I would reserve a 10 for episode 2.
Yeah.
Which I've already told you is my favorite
Right.
episode. 8.5.
Okay.
I'm not even necessarily sure I have problems with it, really. I think it's a very brisk, very smooth episode as far as pace is concerned. I just think that, like, the height of insanity that Tiger King gets to, with, like, the metric being all of the insanity in episode 2,
Yeah.
it gets close but not quite there.
Okay.
And but it's really good, and I appreciate that this is the first one that really tells a story.
Yeah.
There are little stories peppered in between episodes 1, 2, and 3, but this is the first one where it's like, okay, now we're going to sit down and tell you the story of the feud between Joe and Carol and everything that comes in between. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 give you proper background information. Here's Joe Exotic. He's this crazy guy in Oklahoma, is a gun-carrying redneck with a mullet who's got over 200 tigers. Here's Carol Baskin, passionate, wacky animal rights activist who may or may not have killed her husband. Here's Doc Antle. He's this very successful gold standard of what the zookeepers all aspire to be, but he's also a control freak who's got a harem of wives and a conveyor belt of tigers that nobody seems to know where they're going. All excellent background information. Here's where the story starts, and it's a very compelling start to the story.
Yep.
So yeah, very, very solid episode. Really liked it. Really glad that you liked it.
Yeah.
What about you?
So, episode 1, I gave it a 7.
Yes.
Episode 2, I gave it a 9. Episode 3, I gave it a 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna go an 8.5.
I think 8.5 is a solid.
I'm gonna go an 8.5.
Yeah.
Something that I do want to say that I haven't said. Episode 4 did what episode 3 couldn't, because last episode we said we love a good whodunit, but in order for a good
That's true.
whodunit,
That's a good point.
in
I never
order
thought
for-
about that.
because I was listening to it today and I was like, I have to talk about this now. In order for a whodunit to be a good whodunit, has to propose other suspects.
Mm-hmm.
This episode does just that, because
Yes.
it goes animal rights activists. Here's why. Carol. Here's why. Kirkham. Here's why. And then Joe Exotic. And here's why.
Yeah, definitely.
So it definitely, and exactly like what you said, it brings it back to, this is the story of Tiger King.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings back to why we enjoyed episode 1 and episode 2 so much.
Yes, for sure.
Because it spoke about multiple things and it kept that pace, and it wasn't random, it was organized.
Mm-hmm.
It's an organized tornado.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would go least to favorite 3, 1, 4, 2.
Excellent. All right, nice. Very cool. And now we've got a new main character. We got a fourth main character,
Yeah.
Jeff Lowe, who, whether or not he's the worst of them all, hard to say, but he seems to be the least likable, I
Yep.
would say. I think if you were to line them up, it's like, okay, who's the one you'd never get a beer with? I think I'd point right to him,
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%.
So that is that.
The king of segues. What you got for me for the next topic?
I wish I had a segue, but sadly, with
Okay.
this one, I don't.
I think I could do this.
Okay.
I think I could do this.
Speaking of tigers, Spiders.
Tigers, spiders. Speaking of cliffhangers, let's
Oh, there
talk
you go.
about
Okay, not
a
bad.
cliffhanger.
Not bad.
So, Patrick, what are we talking about?
We were talking about Across the Spider-Verse, the new Spider-Man movie that is out. A sequel 5 years in the making, which is
Yeah.
wild to think
Yep.
about. 5 years ago into the well, almost 5 years ago. It was December of 2018.
Yes.
I remember seeing that movie too. It doesn't
Yeah.
really feel like 5 years.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
Truth be told, I
man.
went on a date to see that movie,
There you go.
and I was like, "Wow, this is something.
I had a 10-page paper due the next day that I wasn't
Oh.
even close to being done with.
That is
But
awesome."
I saw it for my buddy's birthday. And I guess before we start, why don't we start with our thoughts on Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah. Into the Spider-Verse was awesome. I mean, here's something that I like to say about Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse is like what basically Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back is, what basically Terminator and Terminator 2 is like.
Okay.
Where the first one, you had no idea what was happening. You had no idea what this movie was going to be.
Unlike anything you'd ever really seen before.
And you didn't know how good it was going to be.
Yeah, for
By
sure.
the second one, you were like, okay, the first one was really good. So what do you have for me for the second one?
For sure.
So yeah, Into the Spider-Verse was awesome. And it was definitely an experience because, like I said, you weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
Yep.
here's this cartoon movie, this animated movie. So you're just like, it's going to be a kid's movie. It's not,
Yeah.
you know,
I was like,
it's going to appeal
it could
to
be
kids.
cool.
It could be cool.
You know, who knows? But I
Yeah.
won't I wouldn't put my money in it. I
Yeah.
would say like this is going to be one of the best movies of the year.
And interestingly enough, the two directors of the movie, the two directors for the Emoji Movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's funny.
exactly. So you're kind of almost like, wait a minute. Okay, so two
So
guys.
of course it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Absolutely. And then you sit down and you see Into the Spider-Verse, and wow, it's very good. It was
Yeah.
really good. It was awesome.
It's a very, very good movie.
very good movie. Awesome soundtrack.
Great soundtrack.
Yeah.
Great animation.
Yes.
Fantastic animation.
Everybody really appreciated the style of animation.
Yeah.
That was something that everybody said. And, you know, as time went on, the conversation for some people said that Into the Spider-Verse was the best Spider-Man movie.
Yes. This is what I was going to bring up as well, as far as my opinion on Into the
Yeah.
Spider-Verse. It's a very good movie. I would rank it more towards the top of Spider-Man movies than I would the middle or the bottom.
Yeah.
Like if I were to think about like mid Spider-Man movies, I'd probably say like Spider-Man Homecoming is kind of like the perfect center for me of like
Yeah.
good but could be better.
Amazing Spider-Man, I would say.
Maybe.
Maybe a little bit lower.
Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man 3 are like below Homecoming. And then
Okay.
like the floor is like Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then for me, Into the Spider-Verse is you've passed the pretty good threshold into pretty like really good.
Yeah.
You're like, for me, this competes with Tobey's Spider-Man 1.
Yes, absolutely. I would. It was at this point when Into the Spider-Verse came out. It's, you know, like the conversation with Star Wars, with Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. I can see why someone thinks that this one is better than this one,
Sure.
but I don't agree with it. But
Yeah.
it's a valid argument.
Sure, I do understand where they're coming from. I think it's a fantastic Spider-Man movie.
Yes.
Maybe an almost perfect one. But I don't think it's a perfect movie about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like if a movie's job is to introduce you to this character for the first
Yes.
time, it doesn't do the best job
No,
at
yeah,
that. It's for
absolutely.
fans, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. But
Because when you jump into this world, it's almost as if, like, you know, you brought up a great point. It's an amazing Spider-Man movie for Spider-Man fans.
yes.
For the general moviegoer, say like
It's
you're not really into Spider-Man because what you made up the
right.
point. Each each introduction of Spider-Man is like
Hmm.
so it's
Oh,
maybe
it's
like
it's way too
minute,
quick.
a
It's like,
minute of like, oh, I got bitten by this radioactive
yep,
spider, and
exactly.
I've been Spider-Man for the past so and so years.
It's got this attitude of like, you already know who Spider-Man is.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, most of us do, but like the next generation doesn't, and
yeah,
they need a proper introduction. And
absolutely, yeah,
granted, they didn't really get it in Homecoming or Civil War either. I think that took a while to get
yeah,
going with Tom Holland as well. Um, but I think they got it really well with the first Tobey Maguire movie, and I
yeah,
feel like if you were to perfect the flaws of that movie, that would be the perfect Spider-Man movie.
yeah,
It doesn't quite reach that. Spider-Man 2 gets a pass because by nature it is a sequel.
yes,
So I think that you're willing, and we're going to get into that conversation soon. To me, that was the one that really mastered the cinematic language as good as a Spider-Man movie ever had.
right,
So, yeah, I was like, Into the Spider-Verse, it's awesome. Love it. It's no Spider-Man 2.
yes,
I would
no,
shoot that down right away. I'm like, it's
absolutely,
just
yeah.
not.
Because I remember, in the times that we would go surfing, amongst all the
A lot
different
of other things we talked about.
yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of other things we spoke about. I remember we were surfing one day and we had this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and you were like, I love Into the Spider-Verse, and
Yes.
but it is no Spider-Man 2. And
No.
I said, I agree with you.
And I had rewatched Spider-Man 2 recently,
Yeah,
and that confirmed it for me. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
it's just not.
No,
It's
like
just not
there
Spider-Man
is
2.
something about Spider-Man 2 that you can watch that movie, and every single time you see that movie, it hits you.
Yeah.
Like you literally are emotionally numb after the movie's over because you're just like, oh my gosh, there was so many things I felt in this movie.
Yeah. It's such a perfectly paced superhero movie. It gets
Yes.
everything right.
Yes.
The emotion, the drama, the comedy,
Yeah.
The action, the fun.
What Spider-Man is all
What
about.
Spider-Man is about. The effects are outstanding
That
after
movie
all
is
this
in
time.
2000. That movie was made in 2004. There are still movies, and we're going to talk about a movie that came out this year.
Yes, we will.
That, it looks like 2004.
I think Spider-Man 2 looks better than Homecoming.
Absolutely. It still stands to the test of time. It aged like fine wine.
It really did. Yeah, I can't believe how good that movie still looks.
And then Across the Spider-Verse comes out.
Yes.
Obviously with COVID delays. And
Unfortunately,
also,
it was supposed to come out earlier.
It was already delayed before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And then through COVID, I think it was delayed like once or twice. And then
That's Sony for you.
yeah, it finally comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat, what do you have to say about Across the Spider-Verse?
I loved it, and like I love Into the Spider-Verse as well, but I say that with a little more hesitation because I don't want to communicate to other fans who say it's the best Spider-Man movie that I feel the same way because I really just don't. Across the Spider-Verse kind of blew me away though.
Yeah.
And you compare it to Empire Strikes Back, and I really agree as far as it being a sequel that seems to really perfect everything and improve upon things and just a lot like Spider-Man 2 where it's got the benefit of being a sequel.
Yeah.
So I think as much as it's very fast-paced, it's very brisk, it's very like this, that, it's more like emotionally centered and focused on Miles as a character and Gwen as a character too.
Yeah.
Gwen gets much more screen time, much more depth than she did in the first movie. Miles has even more to do. His arc in the first movie is fantastic, don't get me wrong. But to just sit with him more and see him grow up more and try and become Spider-Man more, I just felt was a lot more compelling. I thought the animation was a little better, as if it wasn't already fantastic before. But I mean, it was just really dazzling, very stunning looking film.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing soundtrack still. Not even just like in the first one, the music choices really got me, like really fantastic song choices.
Yeah.
This one had great song choices and a fantastic score.
Yes.
Like a really like immersive.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Fantastic.
The 2099 theme?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I just felt that the way it balanced all of the different Spider-Men, I didn't feel like Miles' story was being overshadowed by anything. I thought that they were all complementing his arc. Whereas in the first one, I felt like he was taking a bit of a backseat
Yeah.
to a lot of the attention of like, look at this Spider-Man, look at that. You understand that reference, right? Oh, I
Yep.
know the fans are going to love that. It doesn't really feel like this one does that much. There's a lot of fan service, but it feels like fan service that services the story in a compelling way. And that's what I really loved. I really thought this movie was fantastic. I'll get down to it right now. This is the best movie I've seen all year. I really, really love this movie.
Yeah. Um, it's almost like, what can I say that you didn't
Right.
say?
Without spoiling the movie, too. Which
Yeah.
and there's much to spoil.
Oh my gosh.
There's
Yes,
much to
there
spoil.
is so much that we can talk about, but obviously we want to respect the time, and we don't think that it's appropriate yet to talk about spoilers.
Yeah.
Maybe when it has
Maybe,
more
yeah.
time, we can have a little
When
bit.
it hits streaming, maybe.
Yeah,
we
maybe
could
we'll
have
have a
spoiler
more
discussion.
in depth about it.
I'd love to watch it again, too, honestly, to
absolutely
refresh my memory.
So basically everything that you said, it was wow. Seeing that movie was awesome. There were so many things that were awesome about it.
It's one of those movies you
The-
really want to see in the theater, too.
Yeah, the acting was incredible. The music, the soundtrack, the animation, everything. Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara was
Oh, fantastic.
amazing.
The
amazing.
amazing thing about that, I forgot it was him.
Yeah.
Up until the scene where he screams. I'm like,
Yes.
oh, that's an Oscar Isaac scream.
Yes.
And I'm like, now I remember Oscar
Yes.
Isaac's in this movie.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, his performance is great. And his character
Amazing.
is great.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's very hard, but if he's not the greatest performance, he's one of them.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know who I would pick.
It's hard.
It really is hard. Everybody
because
does a stellar
an
job.
amazing job, and I really like what you said. That the first movie it really felt like Miles was in the back seat.
Yes.
This was Miles Morales' Spider-Man movie.
Definitely. 100%.
And what I really liked about this movie was, again, you have the advantage that it's a sequel, but you have the explanation of, okay, he's Spider-Man, so again, we'll show you what being Spider-Man is all about.
Yes.
And you start seeing that with, obviously, his balance in life, with, school, with his family, with, everything that he doesn't have the time.
Yeah.
Just like any other Spider-Man gets caught up in being Spider-Man. And that sort of then makes him extend his arm from his family. And it really spoke to me as well because, being a Latino as well.
Yeah.
Hearing all the oye, or, all that stuff, mi hijo and everything. I was like, am I watching a movie about my family?
There
Like,
you
what
go.
the heck? Like, there was stuff that, I remember watching it with my dad, Tom, again, shout out Tom, and his buddy. There were times I looked at my friend Tom, and I was just like, dude, this is my family. What the heck? And the second time I saw it with my friend, I saw it with my boys from school. Shout out to St. John's. My buddy Mark, Mateo, and Dan. And Mateo is also Latino. He is Mexican. So it was very funny because there were so many times during this movie, he and I looked at each other and we're like, family, right? This is literally like us? Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was awesome. And again, we just want to talk about it, but we can't. But
yeah.
the plot twists of this movie.
Oh, fantastic.
There were so many plot twists.
A lot of twists and turns, some you might see coming in the way that it's set up. You're like, oh, I want to see where this is going. And some that's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That really caught me off guard.
Yeah. And, a lot of awesome Easter eggs. And
Yeah.
a lot of things that you were just like, wow. I mean, something that I think I can talk about because IGN brought it up. So, my belief is if a big social media account talks about it, we can talk about it.
Okay, sure.
In the movie, it's early in the movie, you see the relationship of Miles and Genki has also evolved Genki is playing the PS5 and he's playing a video game and they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
The very specific game that Genki is playing is the new Spider-Man game that's
Oh,
coming
I
out
think
in
I remember
September.
that. Yeah.
So,
It's
and
very funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very exciting to see
Mm-hmm.
because that game is coming out in October.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. That was a very like little like, yo, dude, like wait, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of moments like that, and you know, the end was the perfect to be continued ending.
Yes.
Because I always like to say, I wish I could have been there when watching the end of Empire Strikes
Mm-hmm.
Back, being like, wait a minute, that's it? You're gonna tell me like that's it? Like
That I gotta
yeah.
wait for however many years
It
to
was
see the next
it
one.
was like how it was with Infinity War. And in this one, this movie ends, and you're just like, that's it? I have to wait now?
I think it's even more like Empire because with Infinity War, you were like, okay, next year.
Yeah.
This one's like, I
Yeah.
don't know, like it's
Yeah.
there was a release date scheduled for next year, but
It's
even before the controversy hit of how a lot of the animators were treated,
Yeah.
it still didn't make a lot of sense to people. Like, how are
Yep.
you going to finish that movie in a year? And now it's like Sony's coming out and saying, okay, it's really not possible. We'll finish it when we finish it. And
Yeah, because they originally explained that it was sort of almost like Infinity War and Endgame, where they were working on it at the same
yeah,
time.
I'm sure they have it mapped out. I'm sure
Yeah.
they know what they're going to do.
I think it was like they already had some work of it done,
Mm-hmm.
but then,
I think a lot of animation is done for
Yeah.
it, but probably like wildly
but
unfinished.
then, unfortunately, we have, it's very unfortunate. All these good things just keep getting like abruptly stopped.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate because it's something that is so avoidable. And what I mean by that is, unfortunately, the controversy is that the animators have claimed that they were not really treated well
Yeah.
in terms of money.
Keep talking. I'm just going to check my phone
Yeah.
real quick.
Where money has been sort of a problem. And what gets me annoyed is they don't realize that that's just not doing them good, because if they spend a little bit more money now to pay these people, it's going to benefit them in the end, because this movie already made so much money. And if you're going to pay these people right now to make the same exact another movie with the same exact people are just going to be excited, and the hype even then is going to explode. But now you have some people that you don't even know if they're going to come back. So obviously, when you get new people, you're obviously going to start getting doubts from other people. Oh,
Yeah.
is it going to be as good as the second one? I don't really know. So it's it's very unfortunate.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it's a bummer because there's not much else to say because it will spoil it. So I will just quickly wrap it up and say, Pat, give it a rating, and also I'm going to ask the important question. Is it the best Spider-Man movie?
Okay. So, rating first is a 9,
Okay.
which is my rating for Spider-Man 2, by the way.
Okay.
It's fantastic in almost every way you can imagine. I've got a few flaws with it. I've actually got one flaw with it that I don't seem to share with anybody. Everybody seems to like really praise this element of the movie, but I do have one issue with the movie that I really wasn't crazy about, and that was at the beginning in Gwen Stacy's universe,
Okay.
when a lot that was done with the color palette would harmonize with her emotions and how she was feeling during
Yeah.
those times. I felt that was a little too on the nose. It was a little too much, and I felt like I was being taken out of the movie. It
Okay.
felt a little pretentious to me and wasn't as well stylized as the rest of the film, in my opinion. But everyone and their mother seems to disagree with me, so I wouldn't put much stock in my opinion there. So go see the movie for yourself and decide. Now, would I consider it the best Spider-Man movie? I'm actually going to hold off on saying whether or not I would. I think I'm going to lean towards no right now, because of some other criticisms that people have of the movie that I don't personally feel,
Okay.
but is a very good point.
Okay.
People don't like that this ends on a cliffhanger. A lot of people don't seem to like that. And I do.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. Leave the audience wanting more. I'm like really looking forward to that anticipation of whenever that next movie comes out. But it does feel like it's not a complete story yet. And this is where I think it's a little different from Empire. In Empire, pretty much everything that's set up in the beginning of that movie is paid off by the end.
Right.
But there are things that are addressed near the end, near the third act, that are not yet resolved. But it's okay because that's by the end of the movie. It's like, okay, you can look forward to that in the next film.
Okay.
It feels like a lot of what was set up at the beginning of Spider-Verse has still yet to be completed and still yet to meet its arc.
Okay.
So it kind of feels like the movie's not done yet. So maybe I will view Beyond the Spider-Verse, which, believe it or not, I could tell right away that's what the title was going to be because it just kind of made the most sense in my head. So I'm going to pat myself on the back there for getting that one right.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to give you some skin.
Oh, cool. Appreciate it.
You did good.
I'll
also pat you on the back.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those like my rating is to be continued too.
Yeah.
You know, but I would say solid 9 right now. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, and I'd love to say that by the end of this whole thing that it will be my favorite Spider-Man movie. That'll be awesome, or I think it'll be the best. I still think I got to give it to Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 has a very cohesive beginning, middle, and end. It's a bit of a tighter movie. And, yeah, maybe it's my nostalgia talking, but I'd still have to say that that's the holy grail, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What about you?
It's very, 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 very tough. Part of me says yes, part of me says no. I feel like I also have to rewatch Spider-Man 2 after seeing this. Because
fair.
Last time I saw Spider-Man 2 was in February, before this movie came out.
Yeah, and I remember too, back to when we went surfing, one of the times when we talked, I think one time we talked about whether or not Far From Home had been Spider-Man 2 level.
Yes.
Because we both really loved that movie too.
Yep.
And the next time we went, we had both rewatched Spider-Man 2
yes,
and we're like,
that's really
nah,
funny. Yeah. No, I totally forgot about that. It was just by chance that he and I both saw it at the same time. We didn't watch it together. We just so happened to see it, and then we both came back and we were like, so I watched it again, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's funny, me too. And what do you think? No. What do you think? No.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, very, it wasn't a hard decision to make.
Yeah, so I would definitely have to rewatch it again.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. I think it would be important to rewatch both of them, compare and contrast, and they're very different movies, obviously, so that's one thing to consider.
And that's exactly what my next point was going to be. Mm-hmm. By the time Spider-Man 2 ends, it's not this automatic cliffhanger. Yes, there are still some things like, okay, like you see Harry Osborn discover his father's lair. Okay. But it's not really as big of a cliffhanger as Across the Spider-Verse is. Because it literally
not
says,
even close.
To be continued.
Yeah, with the end of Spider-Man 2, it's like, oh, here's a little taste of what you can expect, but we still completed the story.
Yeah.
Like, there will be another story, but we completed this story.
Yes.
And this is like, oh, the story ain't over yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's very tough because I can understand why people say that.
Sure.
But I also want to counter it and say, but that's kind of the whole point.
Oh, yeah.
This is a part one
of
a two-part story.
Yeah, I don't I'm not one of those people.
Right.
Like, I remember speaking to people being like, the only part I didn't like was the end because they left it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And I was like, I loved that.
Yeah, that's
for
the
me, that's
point.
not a problem
Yeah.
at all. That's just a reason for me to withhold my rating because I want to see where it goes.
Yes. And I think also the same. I'm probably going to say if might give Spider-Man 9.5 a 10. Might give this like a 9, 9.5.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'll have to rewatch Spider-Man 2 to really see how I feel. But definitely both amazing movies, and it's very awesome. And I can't wait to be able to actually have a full-fledged conversation about this because there's so much to talk about this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And this movie did amazing. And
Very, very well. Very
Pun
well. Much better
intended.
than the first one
Yes.
at the box office.
And a good segue is unfortunately, Warner
Unfortunately,
Brothers...
I think we have to cut the episode short.
Perfect.
So we must delay the Flash discussion in the same way DC kept delaying the Flash.
Perfect. You know what? We're doing it justice. Justice League. Boom.
That's right.
That's awesome. Right. That's amazing.
So
next episode then.
Next episode.
See, we just did a part.
This time for real.
Yeah, we just did a part 1 episode. We did the to be continued.
That's right. Cliffhangers to our discussion on The Flash, directed by Andy Muschietti, starring Ezra Miller in a Batman movie.
Yes.
All right. This was fun.
Very fun.
This was awesome. And join us next time for Tiger King episode 5. Episode 5 of the podcast. Another discussion. Let's really stick to it this time. Let's talk about The Flash because it's becoming old news. It's practically not in theaters anymore.
Yeah.
That was quick. And
it's not just because he's the Flash and he runs fast.
That's right. Fast to lose money.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably find a movie to discuss too. Maybe we'll watch Ninja Turtles. We'll get to that point when we get to that point. But thank you for joining us for another episode, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, take care, guys.